A mother disappears overnight, leaving her car behind. Who took Karen Swift and why? Her husband is the main suspect, but the case is full of twists and turns. Watch to find out what really happened in this mysterious true crime story. On October 30th, 2011, 44-year-old Karen Swift's car was found abandoned on a rural highway near Dyersburg, Tennessee. She had last been seen at home the night before, tucking her 9-year-old daughter into bed. When the girls woke up the next morning, their mother was missing, leaving investigators in Dyer County baffled. There were no clear signs of what happened to Karen. The authorities suspected a homicide, but had no witnesses, no DNA evidence, and unclear cell phone data. Their main suspect seemed physically unable to commit the crime. The mystery of Karen Swift's disappearance unfolded over many years. On the morning of October 30th, 2011, Karen's daughters found her gone. Earlier that night, Karen had picked up her daughter Ashley from a sleepover because Ashley wasn't feeling well. After driving home, Karen and Ashley went to bed around 2 a.m. Karen's husband, David, was upstairs with their younger daughter, Keely. By morning, the car was missing, and so was Karen. Around 3 p.m., David and friends called the sheriff's office. They reported Karen missing and noted her car had been found abandoned with a flat tire. Deputy Alexander and Sergeant Walker arrived and found David with the car. They looked for Karen's belongings, but found nothing unusual except a rusty screw in the tire. Forensic testing later confirmed there was no sign of violence in the vehicle. A search for Karen began in the area around the abandoned car. Nearby, police found a pair of jeans and a tarp that belonged to Karen. Her Halloween costume was still in the car. David told police he last saw Karen around 2 a.m. when she returned with Ashley. The couple had been separated for 3 weeks due to Karen's recent divorce filing, though they continued to live together for the sake of their children. David and Karen's marriage had been rocky. They married in 1989, had 2 sons, and divorced in 1996 after David's affair. They remarried in 2000 and had 2 more children, but Karen later had an affair, leading to the current separation. After moving to Tennessee, Karen quickly adapted to her new life, making many friends despite her troubled marriage. David claimed Karen was erratic and often drank heavily. He alleged that Karen had been seen in compromising situations with her friend Kathy Boner, and implied that the Boners might have had an inappropriate influence on Karen. David's statements grew increasingly strange as he told various stories about Karen's behavior. Detectives found inconsistencies in his accounts and began focusing on the facts of her disappearance. David mentioned that Kathy Boner had shared information about Karen's cell phone pings near the Mississippi River, but this led nowhere. When David was asked about Karen's possible whereabouts, he was unable to provide useful information. The investigation continued, and police found Karen's 2 cell phones near her abandoned vehicle. The phones showed that Karen's regular phone had connected to a signal booster at her home and then went offline around 4:38 a.m., just before the car was found. The second phone, a secret one given to Karen by the Boners, connected to the booster 5 hours later and was found discarded near the first phone. The Boners had given Karen this phone for legal purposes, but it raised more questions. The search for Karen continued with no new leads. Despite extensive efforts, her fate remained a mystery, leaving her family and investigators seeking answers. Multiple witnesses and neighbors recount David's controlling behavior and his actions leading up to Karen's disappearance. Testimonies suggest stalking, arguments over her activities, and eerie encounters in the neighborhood. The timeline of events reveals a growing tension between Karen and her estranged husband, David. Karen had filed for divorce and made the decision to attend a Halloween party, choosing it over a dinner with David. This choice intensified their already strained relationship. Tragically, 6 weeks after Karen went missing, her body was discovered. The absence of solid physical evidence linking David to the crime at that time only fueled speculation. Despite the lack of definitive proof, David emerged as the primary suspect. His leg injury, however, complicated the investigation, raising questions about whether he could have committed the crime physically. Years after Karen's disappearance, David Swift was finally indicted for her murder. However, the case remained largely circumstantial due to the absence of new evidence or witnesses. Testimonies from neighbors and friends painted David as obsessive and controlling, suggesting that he may have orchestrated a premeditated plan. According to this theory, David may have faked his leg injury to create an alibi. This narrative became a cornerstone of the prosecution's case. Despite the persistent gaps in physical evidence and the lack of a concrete witness testimony, in court, the prosecution built a strong case against David by highlighting inconsistencies and suspicious behaviors. They pointed out that David had lied about his knowledge of Karen's second phone and his activities during the night she disappeared. The prosecutor also noted that David had been found viewing dating websites and Karen's photos shortly after her death. This, coupled with evidence suggesting that David was capable of moving a body despite his injury, was used to argue that he was indeed responsible for Karen's murder. The prosecution's arguments were compelling, but the defense challenged these claims. They argued that David's injury required further surgery, casting doubt on his ability to commit the crime. Additionally, David's daughter, Ashley, testified that her mother, not her father, had moved her during the night. The defense also pointed to the lack of physical evidence, such as signs of struggle or blood, which weakened the prosecution's theory that the murder occurred in the garage. This ongoing debate left the case unresolved, with lingering questions about the true events surrounding Karen Swift's death. The defense, however, mounted a strong challenge to the prosecution's claims. They emphasized that David's injury required further surgery, which cast doubt on his physical ability to commit the crime. Additionally, David's daughter, Ashley, testified that it was her mother who moved her during the night, not her father. This testimony was crucial in countering the prosecution's argument. The defense also pointed out the lack of physical evidence, such as signs of struggle or blood in the garage, which undermined the state's theory that Karen was killed there. Despite the prosecution's efforts to build a compelling case, the jury's decision was mixed. David was acquitted of murder, but they were unable to reach a verdict on the charge of voluntary manslaughter. This left the case unresolved and continued to cast a shadow over the pursuit of justice. The outcome highlighted the complexities of the case and the difficulty of securing a conviction without concrete evidence. Throughout the trial, David's defense team raised concerns about the motivations behind the murder charges, suggesting that they were driven by political pressures. They argued that the investigation had failed to produce any direct evidence linking David to the crime. This claim was bolstered by the fact that the sheriff and district attorney were both up for re-election, which added a layer of suspicion to the proceedings. The defense pointed out that the lack of concrete proof of David's guilt was being overshadowed by political ambitions. They implied that the desire to secure a high-profile conviction may have influenced the decision to pursue the case aggressively, despite the evidence or lack thereof. As the trial progressed, this argument became a focal point, with the defense highlighting the potential conflict of interest. They suggested that the legal pursuit of David was less about finding the truth and more about satisfying political pressures and public demands. This perspective created a complex backdrop for the trial, complicating the search for justice. It left many questioning whether the charges were genuinely about solving the crime or if they were a product of political maneuvering in a high-stakes election year. The prosecutor explains the difficulty of presenting a case without direct evidence like DNA or fingerprints, acknowledging that it's always a challenge. Despite being acquitted of murder, David Swift still faces a potential retrial for manslaughter, as the judge declined to dismiss the charges. The emotional toll on Karen's family is evident, especially with her mother's heartbreaking statement about not knowing who to blame. While the search for justice continues, David is also facing separate charges for stalking his second wife. Thanks for watching. If you found this story as gripping as we did, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more true crime mysteries. Your support helps us bring more intriguing cases to light. Stay tuned for our next episode and keep seeking the truth.